He said to me, he said, don't listen to what they said. He said, number two, I will live until your sister's 5th birthday. You mark my words. Fast forward 2 years later, he was there on that 5th birthday, at that 5th birthday party. And a week later, he passed. He literally passed a week after my sister's 5th birthday. And I got to see someone for 2 years live with passion and purpose in every breath he took. It's different than everybody else. I'm a little intense, and it's because of that. Because if I'm going to have an impact in the generation that I'm blessed to be part of and born into, then I've got to be living with passion and purpose in every breath I take.
What if the hardest moment of your life became the reason you led differently forever? You're listening to The Shift, and today's conversation with Charla Gervers will show you how transformation begins in the fire. Charla is a strategist, a leadership coach, and a woman who's helped over 1 million entrepreneurs around the world grow their businesses and themselves. But before all that, she was a 17-year-old girl who lost her dad to cancer and learned what it meant to lead herself through pain, purpose, and breakthrough. Here's what we get into: influence versus authority, how to lead without pressure, ditching balance for real-life harmony, and how to lead without wearing a mask. This one will challenge you, encourage you, and remind you what leadership is really about.
All right. Hey, Charla, thanks so much for being with me today.
I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me, Amy.
Yeah. Always a good conversation with Charla's here. So, before we even get into leadership styles or the influence that you have, do you mind taking us back just for a moment and maybe discuss a chapter of your life or the journey that you've taken that has shaped you into who you are today?
Oh, wow. Yeah. I would say that the initial chapter of my life is kind of the one that shaped me and became the launch pad for who I am and who I ultimately became. I was raised by 2 entrepreneurs. One of them, my dad was an excavator. So I drove a water truck at 8, a dump truck at 10, and a front end loader when I was 12, and grew up on his job sites. And God never been sick in his life. Come home at 15 years old, and they tell us that he has cancer, and it is so bad. It's in every organ of his body. He had 6 weeks to live. And then he tells me, he said to me, he said, don't listen to what they said. Number one, don't ever say that word around me, cancer. He said, number two, I will live until your sister's 5th birthday. You mark my words. My baby sister was 3. I was 15. And, am I going to believe a doctor or the guy that's laying in the bed? I kind of believe the doctor at that. But fast forward 2 years later, he was there on that 5th birthday, at that 5th birthday party. Wow. 2 days later, his second kidney blocked all the way. When they found it, one kidney was completely blocked with cancer. The other was 99% blocked. That's why they said get his affairs in order. He lived 2 years with a kidney that was 99% blocked.
Wow.
And then 2 days later, it blocked all the way. And a week later, he passed. He literally passed a week after my sister's 5th birthday, which to me, there's so much in just that, in the 2 years of who he was in that time, living with passion and purpose in every breath that he took. I was 17 by this time when he actually passed, a senior in high school. And that was how I started my life, having to pay my way through school. After we sold up all the equipment and paid the medical bills, we didn't have enough for a headstone. And that really, truly was where Charla launched her life, and paid my way through school and through college. And, everything since then has all been referring kind of back to that time and the lessons that I learned in that time, because life is too short for all of us. And I got to see someone for 2 years live with passion and purpose in every breath he took. And it is different than the world. It's different than everybody else. I'm a little intense, and it's because of that. Because if I'm going to have an impact in the generation that I'm blessed to be part of and born into, then I've got to be living with passion and purpose in every breath I take.
Yeah. And so, I know a little bit about your story, and some people who are listening might not, but do you mind just, even before we get started, sharing some of the pearls of wisdom that your father shared with you during those 2 years that maybe you still hold dear to your heart today?
Yeah. I would say one is, you can be anything you want, truly. You can do anything you set your mind to, good Lord willing. That was like a saying he had. And I think just being so intentional about what he put into his mind, what he chose to focus on, what he chose, the words he chose in that time, the thoughts he chose in that time. It's more that what he did in that time than even the words he said. He was pouring life lessons in me till 11, 12 o'clock at night. And I'd finally have to say, Daddy, I got to go to bed. I've got to get up and be at basketball practice at 5 a.m. But it was the intensity that was that's been a few years ago now. But the intensity, the intentionality, every day when I got home, he had another list of what he was going to pour into me. So do I remember the words? Not so much, but I do remember. I think a part of me does. A part of me absolutely has known what would my dad say in this given point in time, which was really his intention. He knew he wasn't going to be here. So he wanted me to have the best of him that I could get in that time. So I know it's been poured into me, and it's honoring it each day. It's really living with that same type of intentionality and the same type of urgency, I think, is another word that has been a word that defines me. I've got a sense of urgency that almost feels unnatural to people, but it's because we're here to make a difference. We're here to make an impact. And so I do live with urgency in everything. So it can be exhausting to be around me, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But that's just who I am now. So that, I think the greatest gift he gave me was his presence and that passion and purpose and intentionality and everything he did and said.
I love that. And, I think you and I both have intensity, like you said, like we're both such intense people, and people oftentimes have even said to me, Amy, lighten up or whatever. But
Tone
isn't
it
it beautiful that it's like we know what's at stake? There's so many people who just think that, they have all the time in the world, but you never know when the last day will be, right? And so if we could all live our lives with that mindset of, hey, today could be my last day, how much different, just that one thing already. Like we're not even 5 minutes into this thing. That one thing already makes a huge difference for people. But you lead a lot of teams, but you've also reported up to other leaders. So let's start there and talk about some of the leaders you've worked under. I know you've worked under both empowering leaders. You've worked under some difficult leaders. Can you share maybe some information specific about lessons you've learned from maybe toxic leaders or even from leaders who were not as empowering as others? So what are some of the lessons you've learned, and how has that shaped your own leadership values?
Oh, great question. I've learned a lot. I think I tend to focus on the good. I tend to focus on I am a Pollyanna, if you will. I believe there's going to be a good that comes of this, even if it's just a lesson that I learn. And I have had a couple of those situations. And I would say I learned, number one, what I didn't want to be, who I didn't want to be. That was number one. So if that's not it, then what's 180 degrees from what I was experiencing? That's kind of the approach that I took of, okay, so if this individual is going to be, condescending and mean and rude, and I'm going to be kind. I'm going to be kind no matter what. And I'm going to treat them with dignity and respect, no matter how I'm treated, because ultimately that's my choice. My power is in how I show up and how I respond, not in getting sucked into it. I can argue with the best of them, but not getting sucked into an argument. It's not going to go anywhere. It's not going to help anything. So if somebody is emotional and their emotion is high, intelligence is low for all of us, right? So me trying to keep my emotion low and stick to the facts and treat people with kindness and dignity and respect when their emotion is high, that's the best thing that I can do to show up and be who I'm committed to be in those situations. That would be one that was a huge one of how to show up in that and engage in a way that is both professional, respectful, and that's able to get somewhere. It didn't always get somewhere. Sometimes it just ended, and a conversation might end or a meeting might end, and it didn't get resolved. But at least I walked out that door knowing that I showed up as the person I'm designed to be. And I showed up with treating them with dignity and respect, even if it was that I didn't have an answer, that I will get that answer for you. If I was too upset inside or getting too upset, I would typically end that conversation in a way that would be, let me go ahead and get the information and come back. And then That way I could also re-engage at a different place where I was talking about the facts and bring that person in to look at the facts as well too. So just a couple of strategies, but I think the bigger picture is really who you are determines what you do and how you do it. So if I ever let someone else pull me off of who I am, what I do and how I do it is not going to be something I'm going to be proud of. So me being able to stick to who I am in every circumstance, that's probably the biggest challenge of my whole life, and especially professionally speaking. So that would be number one lesson.
Yeah. And so that's absolutely displaying like a high level of emotional intelligence, right? So being able to read yourself, that piece of being able to understand your own emotions and recognize when you start feeling that fire, maybe like I get this fire in my chest when I get upset. Right. And so, and allowing that separation moment between the situation and your emotions.
Yes.
So that you can come back and speak in the way that, like you said, that represents who you are. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what they say, what they do. The words that we choose to use are the words that are going to reflect who we are. And we want to make sure that those are the words that represent the brand we're building or who we want to be or what we want to be known for, right?
That's right.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I also know that you yourself lead this volunteer army. So explain to us what a volunteer army is, if you don't mind, and then maybe tell us some things that you've learned from others that have helped you be a positive, inspiring, great leader for your army.
Absolutely. Yes. So I have been blessed for all of my professional career, just about, to be in a leadership capacity with people who are entrepreneurs. They're independent entrepreneurs who sell whatever product or service the company is that I'm with, that I'm representing. So they can choose as an entrepreneur to do that day, to work their business, or they can choose not to work their business. They grow teams of people also and are leading teams that are all volunteer army as well. They're doing it for a purpose, to add income to their family or whatever why their dreams are, but it's tapping into and helping people at the end of the day want to do the business. There's a friend of mine, Chuck Gideon, he always said his first rule is first they have to want to. And he would say that to me at times where I was frustrated and I was, trying to, mobilize people into action. And he'd go, Charla, first they have to want to. And it's kind of like you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink type of thing. It's that same thing. And so the cornerstone of what I do that's different than traditional sales with people who, they've got a quota, they've got their, whatever they have to meet that are their goals, is that people set their own goals. So the company, the sum total of individual entrepreneurs' goals, that becomes the company's goals. So how do you set company goals when it's up to tens of thousands of individual people, hundreds of thousands of individual people around the world in different geographies? How do you set company goals in that environment? Well, you get really good at inspiring people. If you can inspire people to want more, they're going to do more. They're going to believe more. And ultimately, they're going to get more in terms of the results that the company's ultimately wanting as well. So I look at my role as kind of always having been and modeling and working with others who are doing the same thing, and being that chief inspiration officer, that we've always got to be inspiring people. And if we're inspiring people, then they want to work their business. It's not a grind. It's a get to, not a have to. And, making it a little more lighthearted. I'm intense and serious, so I have to surround myself with chief fun officers, I will call it, because that's not my gift. I have to work at having fun. But that business and running a business like this should be fun, because you're doing it with other people and you're all celebrating each other's success, and it becomes a collective impact that can create a ripple effect in the communities and even globally, for some of the companies that I've represented.
That's fantastic. So you're creating a culture, like with that excitement and that positivity and inspiring each other. And you've titled yourself the CIO, the Chief Inspirational Officer. That's fantastic. I love it. When people are able to dream beyond that glass ceiling. They don't know how to break through that glass ceiling, but then you show them how. Once
Exactly.
they do, and you get to be there and witness them excel and see them like
Yeah,
perform beyond anything they ever thought, that is like one of the most intrinsically rewarding things
it is.
ever.
If I'm addicted to anything, it's that. It's success stories of people. I literally, it's been the privilege of my life to be able to serve and to be able to help take people by the hand who have a dream, but they, maybe they don't have a degree. Maybe they don't, people who've never been out of the state they grew up in, and they earn incentive trips and they go exotic places that their first time on an airplane was as a result of working their
Wow.
business. People who would get cars as a result of working their business that are a brand new car, not a hand-me-down car from their older siblings or something. The dreams literally never end. Working with a lady who put wells in Africa, and it was a childhood dream of hers to put a well in Africa somewhere because she remembered that kids were dying of not having drinking water, clean drinking water. And then she goes on to build on every continent except Antarctica, wells in underserved communities to be able to have clean drinking water, access to clean drinking water. The stories are endless, truly, but that's what inspires me. Is it doesn't matter how small a dream, if you just want to add a couple hundred extra dollars to your family because maybe you only have a couple hundred discretionary income at the end of the month, everything else is, those bills are already paid. That can be life changing for people to just add another couple $100 or find that plan B or exit strategy and be able to add the and then some to life. Being able to be the yes mom instead of the no, we can't do it mom. Like, you name it, the dreams are out there. And so I have parked those stories in my heart. I've had the privilege of literally tens of thousands of stories that I've gotten the opportunity to be part of in some little tiny way. And seeing it from the sidelines and seeing this person go from being a budding flower. I always think of it that way, as they're this little bud. And then I get to discover what kind of flower they are as they bloom into the person that they're meant to be. So I don't care what their background is. There is something that being an entrepreneur, it unleashes things you never had the opportunity to. It
Absolutely.
also comes up against your own internal barriers like nothing else ever has too. Those things you thought you got beyond, well, guess what? They're going to rear their ugly head as a part of a business, because those self-defeating games that we play with ourselves, they just come up. And then you either back down from them or you break through them. And that's the fun, is when you see people break through those limits that have been on them. And most of the time they are self-limits. There's nothing like it. Then you've just unleashed someone to achieve their full potential. And that changes generations. That doesn't just change that family. It changes so much more.
So it doesn't matter how big or how small their dream is. It's their personal dream, and it's their dream because it's planted in their heart. But you're right. A lot of times it's the stories that we tell ourselves that hold us back from chasing after our dreams. And sometimes we don't even know that it's a story. It's a lie that we've bought into because we bought into it from well-meaning family members, maybe, or other leaders, teachers, people in our life, or even just from society, So society tells us that we're supposed to stick to the status quo. Well, the status quo isn't always the right path for everybody. And if you listen to society, there's a good chance you might be unhappy.
Exactly right. And a lot of those, I'll never or will always. Like, those are the place to take inventory. If you want to know the lies that you maybe have bought into, I don't believe anything is an always or an ever. I think those extremes are the way we can pick up on something that is not healthy for us, because we can break through an always, and then it doesn't get to define us anymore. So you asked about toxic leaders too. And the toxic leaders are over here that, have not led in a way that it's inspiring to me. I'll say it that way, right? They're not inspiring. They're more demanding. They're more, you've got to do this, right? Because I said so. And it's more the title and the position that creates the authority. Whereas in the industry that I've been blessed to be a part of, it doesn't take a title to be a leader. It's all about the influence. And that person influencing a group of people, it doesn't matter what their title is. It doesn't matter what their position of authority is. It's about them inspiring people to be more and do more. And then they will have more. And it's just the total opposite of it. So I've been blessed to learn from people in the field that I've been leading, because they give me the biggest window to life and to leadership lessons and to much more than I could personally experience myself through all of them, and helping them navigate that, and coaching them, and helping them with the tough times, and helping them with the good times and everything in between. That's really been the laboratory that I feel like, from a leadership standpoint, I've been blessed to uniquely see, because they can choose to do it or not. So then when they choose to do different, it's different than an employee choosing to do something because they need the paycheck, right?
Yeah. And I imagine that being able to watch people step into that is amazing. Because they are entrepreneurs, right? And they get the choice. In leadership circles, there's a lot of conversation around this work-life balance thing. And you and I have had conversations about this. So I believe you probably know how I feel about that. But during one of our conversations, you shared with me your philosophy on that topic.
Yes.
Would you mind sharing with our listeners what you've shared with me about work-life balance?
I sure will. Yes. Speaking of some of the best mentors I've ever had, the woman who I had just taught a workshop with these entrepreneurs on time management and how to make the most of your time that you have, right? And just got through teaching this workshop. I was pretty excited, nailed it. I felt like she walks up as I was walking up. She said, "Hey, great delivery." She said, "I just have one coaching moment for you." And she said, "Balance is a myth." And I was like, "What?" And she said, "Your whole presentation was on work-life balance, and balance is a myth. It is not what you're actually striving for." I was like, "What do you mean? Like, you just popped my bubble." I was all excited. Now you're saying everything I said was garbage. Well, here was her philosophy. She said, imagine a scale, like the scale, like a justice scale, right? If they're perfectly balanced and you work hard to get it perfectly balanced, but even a feather was on one, it can tip the scales. Something as light as a feather could tip it. And so balance is actually too fragile for the world that we live in and for the lives that we want to live. When you just have balance, you, at any given point in time, it could be thrown off. Yep. She said, I would look through the lens of harmony. That if you are in harmony, and so think of a choir singing, right? If your family and the balance that you have, we talked about that, but if it's instead harmony, you're singing, one song note, or you're playing a violin and your husband is playing the, piano and your son is playing the drums, and you're coming together and making a beautiful sound together in harmony with each other. That's a totally different proposition. You're all on the same page of the same songbook doing life together. And that harmony means you're in sync with each other, right? Mm-hmm. There's a perfect synchrony that comes with that harmony that is not fragile, because everybody knows their role. Everybody knows the part that they're supposed to play. And the individual sound from a piano is beautiful, but the sound from a symphony is otherworldly, right? The sound from an opera versus an individual person singing, our choir of hundreds of people versus an individual. It's just a whole different level. You feel it. You get goosebumps because of it. And she's like, that's what you want. You want something that is in such perfect harmony that when one thing's out of place, everybody knows the part they need to play to make up for it. So harmony versus balance was the lesson that the great Georgia Savoy taught me. And I've never forgotten it. I've presented everything differently as a result since.
I love it too, not only because it paints like a picture perfect image of what life looks like and how beautiful life can be, but also because when you're talking about the symphony and the harmony, that's a positive. It can be inspiring.
Yes.
Where when people talk about work-life balance, I mean, just bluntly, they're talking more on a selfish nature. Like, I'm not going to give you my best in this area because I got to save it over here.
That's
if I'm
true.
Like you said, the feather can tip the scale, but I'm not going to give you my best today because if I do, I'm not going to have energy to give my best over here, and it's going to be out of whack. Where instead, if we have the mindset of, I'm going to give my best, and wherever I am in that orchestra, wherever I am in that symphony,
Yes.
then my life can be something beautiful. So there's so many layers with
Yes.
that one example, right?
Yes, it is. There's so many layers. Everybody knowing the part they play and what your ultimate goal is.
Another layer, I think, is that everybody has their area of expertise, what they're talented at, what they do best. So just, you might have the best bass player on the planet, but if you put a flute in his hands, he might not know what to do with it, and
That's
vice
right.
versa.
That's
So
right.
I just love all the different ways that we can look at that analogy and how much richer it is than just talking about balance.
And then when people can be in their gift zone where they're uniquely gifted to be able to do it, it doesn't even feel like work. Like if that is the thing that you can do without even thinking about it, it's your gift zone. So
Right. Exactly. Without prep, without studying, just out there doing it. And a lot of times it's the things that we can do all day and never get tired of it, never feel stressed. And we look at the clock and it's like, oh my gosh, it's 10 p.m. at night. I've been, this happens to me. I've been sitting here since 4 writing or whatever because I love to write. Now, speaking of gifts, you are a truly gifted leader. Tell us about your leadership philosophy, Charla.
Well, I believe that leadership is influence, John Maxwell. Leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. And that influence, we choose the influence we have, right? It is about being intentional, or it's going to happen by default. That if we're not intentional with our leadership, it can become whatever others perceive it to be. So I think a lot of times people are in a leadership position, but may not take the intentionality behind it and the influence that they want to have and really consider that piece of it. What is the influence I want to have on the people? What is the influence that I want to have on the company? What is the influence I want to have on my customers? Whatever that may be. And there is an influence for each one that may be slightly different. And then making sure that we show up to be that person at that time to that individual or that audience. It is something that is not for everyone. I think a lot of times people, they think that leadership is for everyone and they want to be that, but maybe that is a great individual contributor. If I'm a great individual contributor at something, I might not be great in leadership, and vice versa. If I'm great in leadership, I might not be that great of an individual contributor. And so it takes in a team, it takes really understanding the strengths and the gifts of each person on the team, and how do we come together? The sum is greater than, the individual parts.
Right.
That's what you have is a 1 + 1 = 10 kind of opportunity when you have a team that really understands that. So for me, leadership is about the team that's being led. So direct reports, that's one. But then in the world that I live in from a volunteer army standpoint, well, each city is a little bit different structure of a team and different people that are involved. The personality of the team is going to show up different as a collective whole, right? So they're going to need something a little bit different than another city will, even if they've been in business for the same exact amount of time. You kind of become the people that you're surrounded with. So not thinking that everything is one size fits all. You can't in leadership. And the bigger the group of people that you lead, the more diverse that's going to show up, the more you're going to need to lean in. So for me, it's all about empowerment. How can I empower that individual to step fully into their own personal power? How can I help them discover for themselves without telling them what's standing in their way? How can I help them unleash the greatness that's inside them and truly move past the self-limiting beliefs and games that they play with themselves?
In our conversation today, from the beginning to where we are, you were talking about being authentically yourself, right? Being careful about the words you use, taking that space to make sure that the words you spoke were intentional words. And that's one of the things that I work with a lot with teams is how do you manage that authenticity while still being able to adapt and be a good person? It is possible. And I think a lot of the world thinks that being authentic means that, hey, you just take me as I am. And that's not the case at all. Authenticity is that person who can still be themselves and have their character, their value, their morals, their personality, but can very respectfully adapt to the person as needed, right?
Absolutely. I from a leadership standpoint, I think also if you come in with a point of view, it's one point of view as the leader. But if you ask enough good questions of the people that you're attempting to lead, and you ask those great questions, they're going to tell you everything that you need to know in order to know if they're at point A and your goal is to get them to point B. They're going to tell you everything you need to know to be able to guide them and to be able to help them make those decisions themselves to take the steps forward. They're taking steps forward. They're in motion. Objects that are in motion stay in motion. It's a law of physics, and tend to stay in motion, I should say. But that is a law of physics. I know if they're going the wrong way, then it's just a matter of, okay, how do I redirect? How can I help them and love them back over to where they need to be able to gain the ground, maybe that had been lost.
You shared about your journey with your father, and then stepping into adulthood on your own. If you could go back in time and sit down and talk to that 18-year-old Charla, what would you tell her?
Wow. I would tell her to forgive him for dying, to work on that and make that primary, and to surrender to God. As it cost me too many years of trying to prove myself and trying to climb the corporate ladder, trying so hard. And that cost me peace. It cost me just being present with my oldest child. And, though that I would say was a decade that it would have saved me. If I had that peace and I had comfort in my own skin, and I wasn't always trying to strive and prove. And, I felt, in that time that I could have been a totally different place. Fast forward, I probably could have been clear about who I was, like in my 30s, but at 20, because I had the life to be able to do it. Sure, I learned how to be an executor of a will, how to manage and negotiate with a hospital to, take what we had and take it and clear his name, or don't. And you're not going to get it because we don't have it. What 17-year-old walks into a hospital and is negotiating that, large sums of money, and selling off equipment and selling off houses. And I didn't know I couldn't do it. I just did it. So from a business standpoint, I just stepped into those roles, but on an emotional standpoint, I froze, and I stayed at that 17-year-old place emotionally and just didn't let people in. So it was hard to get close to me. It was hard. I don't think I was authentic. If I look back now, I don't think that 20-something Charla was even close to being authentic. Mm-hmm. I wore a mask. I wore a mask at work. I wore a mask at home. I wore a mask everywhere, because didn't feel safe, where I was. And ultimately, I thought, when I say forgive my dad, forgive him for dying on us, forgiving God for taking him. There's a lot that I would look back on and say differently, but if I just did that, it would change so much of my life. But I also think it happened when it needed to. It happened, it gave my oldest probably who he didn't want to be, as a, uptight, real intense parent, who didn't let his rear end hit the ground, a helicopter mom extraordinaire. Yes, I was. Absolutely, I was. So is he that now? Nope, he's not that. Okay, well, maybe I gave him the what not to be, and that's okay. I served whatever lesson I was supposed to serve. I have forgiven myself for those things that, early in my parenthood journey, I don't think any of us are ready for, but I certainly wasn't emotionally ready.
No, we don't get a handbook.
Yeah, no.
We don't get a handbook.
Even if we did, I don't think that it would kind of go in one ear and out the other.
So we're going to get to the part now that's that Insight Wild Card. I think you're familiar with it. We have a list of questions that have been created specifically for you, actually.
Okay. All right.
So 1 through 10, just pick any number that's on your heart, whatever you want to say. And we've got 10 questions vetted just for you today.
All right. 3.
Number 3. What's something you believed, past tense, about leadership 10 years ago that you no longer believe today?
2015.
Or we can rephrase it as, what's something that you once believed about leadership that you no longer believe today?
Yeah, I think that the leader the leader is the one leading from the front always. I think that if I go back far enough, that would be, I had a perception that the leader is the one on the white horse leading from the front. And I had a beautiful lesson in that, where I went to a meeting that a lady was having. She'd had her own business for 30 years. There were about 300 people in the room. And I got there a little bit late. My flight got in late, and I walk into the room and I never saw her in the course of about an hour meeting. I never saw her. And I'm like, she's the leader of this team. And until the very end, one of the ladies that was facilitating, she said, and now please welcome Betty Hughes. And Miss Betty, as everyone called her, walked from the back of the room. She was literally in the back chair on the aisle, walked straight up to the front. She spoke for about 2 minutes, and she spoke so softly that you could have heard a pin drop. But everybody in that room hung on every single word that she said. She was an introvert. She was a S in the DISC profile, and she never led from the front. She empowered those people in the gift zones that they had. And it was it was like a lightning bolt through me when I saw that. And I saw her style. I experienced who she was. I experienced the totality of her leadership in an immersive sort of way. You just don't ever get that typically. And that was it. That was the change for me. I was like, wait a second. You mean the way you lead and where you lead from can be just as personal as your personality type is. And that when you actually lean into that, you get the sum total, like that harmony we were talking about. Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh, the harmony of that team, they all knew the role that they were supposed to play, and they played it impeccably. It was beautiful. So yes, that has been the one that truly changed everything. So I love discovering people's leadership style, discovering about that person, how they are meant to lead, because they do have a leadership style and a gift around leadership. So what is that? And how do I unleash that? Then we're going to get the very best of them. So
love it. And that just goes to show that there's not only one way to lead a team. It also works for different leaders and individuals and organizations. So finding the right approach for the situation, I think, is so much more important than just having a cookie cutter, one size fits all approach. You know, a cookie cutter, one size fits all sales approach, leadership style, training, any of those types of things, coaching, counseling. It's not nearly as effective as when you're able to personalize it to that situation. As we wrap this up, is there anything else that you would like to leave us with? Any lingering thoughts or additional pearls of wisdom you'd like to bestow upon us?
Oh, sure. I think the biggest barrier I see people when they're trying to step into their leadership and they're struggling with it for whatever reason, they're afraid to just be themselves. They had this image of what they have to be or who they have to be, and they get so wrapped around this imagined person thing that instead of just embracing who they are and taking a step at a time to grow their skills and grow their influence, they're trying to be something that they don't embody yet. They can, and they can work toward it, but it's your power is in embracing the moment and taking the next step and taking that next step, not in wearing the mask and pretending that I'm this when I know deep down inside I'm not.
Right.
So just be yourself, meet yourself where you are, and then start taking action, start taking risks, ask for feedback. Feedback is the breakfast of champions. When you will really embrace it and it's done from a loving place, ask for feedback from those people that you admire their leadership. Yeah. How can you grow your leadership the fastest? Get that direct feedback from people that you admire and that matter to you, that you believe can speak life into you and into your leadership style and journey.
So how can people connect with you if they want to learn more? Where can they go to find you?
Well, Charla Gervers on LinkedIn. I'm at Charla Gervers on Instagram, and then Charla Gervers Think Energy on Facebook. So those are the best places to get in touch with me. And if you want to email me, charla.gervers@verizon.net. It's fine too.